From New Orleans Public Television, this is Democracy Now!
A shutdown will have a very real economic impact on real people.
Government shutdown. It's the first in 17 years. 800,000 federal workers will be furloughed. More than 1 million others will be asked to work without pay. We'll go to Washington to speak with Mother Jones reporter Tim Murphy. Then, as we broadcast from the Gulf Coast, site of the worst offshore oil spill in U.S. history, BP is back in court, accused of lying about how much oil was leaking during the 2010 Gulf of Mexico oil spill. And after a heated meeting Monday night, a local levee board vice president loses his post for supporting a lawsuit against 97 oil and gas companies.
If nothing is done, according to the State Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, statewide flood damages over time will rise to an average of $23.4 billion a year. For the wealthiest industry in the world to shift the burden of preventing these costs to the citizens of Louisiana is unfair, to say the least.
We'll speak with the ousted Flood Board member, John Barry. Well, he's an award-winning historian, author of Rising Tide. And we'll be joined by Monique Harden with Advocates for Environmental Human Rights here in New Orleans. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. government has begun a partial shutdown for the first time in 17 years after Congress failed to break a partisan deadlock by a midnight deadline. Some 800,000 federal workers are to be furloughed and more than 1 million others will be asked to work without pay. The shutdown was spearheaded by Tea Party Republicans who backed a House bill tying continued government funding to a one-year delay of the Affordable Care Act and the repeal of a tax to pay for it. The Democratic-controlled Senate insisted on funding the government through November 15th without conditions. On Monday, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said House Republicans have failed the nation.
As we gather here right near Statuary Hall, I'm reminded that President Washington, when he was leaving office, cautioned against political parties that were at war with their own government. And here we are tonight. You do not use the threat of shutting down government to try to advance your policy agenda. That's just not the way it works. And that's what is called irresponsible, and that is why this is the Tea Party government shutdown.
Despite the government shutdown, a key Obamacare initiative begins today. Individuals seeking health insurance under the new program can now enroll online through new federal marketplaces and state ones. On Monday, President Obama said he won't negotiate over the enactment of his signature health care law.
Let me be clear about this. An important part of the Affordable Care Act takes effect tomorrow, no matter what Congress decides to do today. The Affordable Care Act is moving forward. That funding is already in place. You can't shut it down. This is a law that passed both houses of Congress, a law that bears my signature, a law that the Supreme Court upheld as constitutional, a law that voters chose not to repeal last November.
We'll have more on the government shutdown after headlines. President Obama has renewed the threat of military force against Iran just days after speaking by phone to Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. In an appearance with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House, Obama said the U.S. reserves the right to launch military strikes should diplomacy fail. Netanyahu then called on Obama to maintain sanctions against Iran and even tighten them should it make nuclear advances.
Is that we can resolve this diplomatically. But as President of the United States, I've said before, and I will repeat, that we take no options off the table, including military options, in terms of making sure that we do not have nuclear weapons in Iran that would destabilize the region and potentially threaten the United States of America.
If diplomacy is to work, those pressures must be kept in place. And I think they should not be lessened until there's verifiable success. And in fact, it is Israel's firm belief that if Iran continues to advance its nuclear program during negotiations, the sanctions should be strengthened.
President Obama's phone call with Rouhani on Friday marked the highest-level contact between the U.S. and Iran since 1979. In response to Netanyahu's comments, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said, quote, "We have seen nothing from him but lies and actions to deceive and scare." United Nations chemical weapons experts are arriving in Syria today to launch their mission to destroy the Assad regime's stockpile. The mandate was established in the UN Security Council resolution adopted last week. It sets a timeline of mid-2014 for the complete elimination of Syria's chemical arsenal. In an address to the UN General Assembly Monday, Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallem continued the regime's denial of using chemical weapons, claiming foreign governments are supplying them to Syrian rebels.
However, there remains the challenge that is facing all of us, whether those who are supplying terrorists with these types of weapons will abide by their legal commitments, since terrorists who used poisonous gases in my country have received chemical agents from regional and Western countries that are well known to all of us.
The arrival of the UN disarmament experts comes as a team of inspectors have completed their second mission investigating alleged chemical weapons attacks in Syria. A final report is expected later this month. The latest disclosures from the leaks of whistleblower Edward Snowden show the NSA is storing the Internet metadata of millions of people for up to a year, regardless of whether or not they're linked to an investigation. The stored metadata includes vast personal records of Internet use, including browsing history and account passwords. The online information is stored in a database codenamed Marina. 33 people have been detained in Texas after crossing into the U.S. from Mexico as part of a protest against record deportations. 33 undocumented youths who lived in the U.S. as children, as well as 3 of their parents, are being held at the Laredo crossing. It's the second time in 3 months that undocumented immigrants have attempted to re-enter the U.S. through an official point of entry. A group called the Dream 9 was held for 3 weeks after trying to enter the U.S. in July. All 9 are now seeking asylum. On Monday, the 30-plus activists marched across a bridge connecting Mexico to the U.S. wearing graduation caps and gowns, chanting "Undocumented and Unafraid." 2 Marine Corps generals have been forced into early retirement over a security lapse in Afghanistan last year. Major Generals Charles Gurganis and Greg Sturtevant were found to have committed a series of errors that led to a militant attack on a U.S. base, leaving 2 Marines dead and a number of warplanes destroyed. The forced resignations of high-ranking officers are the first in the Marine Corps since the Vietnam War. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has announced the expulsion of 3 U.S. diplomats over what he says are efforts to destabilize his government. In a televised address, Maduro called out the diplomats by name.
3 North American diplomats. I've told Foreign Minister Elias Hua to proceed with their immediate expulsion from the country. They have 48 hours to leave the country. Kelly Kederlin, Elizabeth Hunderlin, David Moot. Get out of Venezuela. Yankee, go home. Get out of Venezuela.
Venezuelan President Maduro says the 3 met with extreme right opposition groups in a bid to disrupt Venezuela's electrical power grid and sabotage its economy. In a statement, the U.S. Embassy said it completely rejects Maduro's allegations. Thousands of people rallied in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, to mark the 22nd anniversary of the first U.S.-backed ouster of then-President Jean-Bertrand Aristide, Haiti's first democratically elected leader. Monday's protest doubled as a rally against Haitian President Michel Martelly, who is facing pressure to call long-delayed Senate and municipal elections. A pair of hunger-striking Canadians jailed in Egypt for over a month without charge have spoken out for the first time about their ordeal. John Grayson, a Toronto filmmaker, and Tarek Loubani, a doctor, were arrested in Cairo on August 16th. The two were slated to visit Gaza, where Grayson was to film Loubani as he trained emergency room doctors. In a statement smuggled out of their prison cell, Grayson and Loubani said they were arrested after rushing to the scene of a mass shooting by state forces of supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi. Grayson says he began filming the shooting's aftermath while Loubani treated some of the injured. They said they were then, quote, arrested, searched, caged, questioned, interrogated, videotaped with a, quote, Syrian terrorist, slapped, beaten, ridiculed, hotboxed, refused phone calls, stripped, shaved bald, accused of being foreign mercenaries, he said. They've since been held in cockroach-infested jail cells with as many as 36 other people. Over the weekend, Egyptian authorities confirmed their imprisonment has been extended another 45 days, still without charge. A British university is pulling its more than $1 million investment in a military firm that makes parts for armed U.S. drones. The University of Edinburgh announced its divestment from the company Ultra Electronics following a campaign from students and human rights activists. Ultra supplies air navigation systems for the U.S. fleet of Predator and Reaper pilotless drones. Student activists from the City University of New York are continuing protests against the school's hiring of former CIA director and military general David Petraeus to teach a class. On Monday, demonstrators rallied outside of a building where Petraeus's course has been relocated following several rallies.
Just seeing the few videos that were released on YouTube, it was terrible. You know, like you seeing them getting cuffed and kneed and just like mushed around. And it's like, why would they go to these extremes? Why would you need that if it's really just an innocent class?
And even though they beat me down, I'm still not scared. I'm still not scared, and I won't stop until we have Petraeus and ROTC out.
Are facing charges following their arrest at a protest last month. Prior to heading the CIA, Petraeus commanded U.S. troops in the occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're on the road in Louisiana, broadcasting from New Orleans Public Television, WLAE.